Tara says the ha-ha emoji. Great. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. So we'll go ahead and get started. And as folks trickle in, they can join us. So thank you, everybody, for making the time and taking a few hours out of your week to spend with us. We're going to, continue on with the fourth session today of the motivational interviewing with Dr. Tomlin and her crew. And we have, sent out some additional materials this week. So you may have seen those in your email. If not, we can attach those in the chat for you to download right now. So just let us know. And so this morning we wanted to do a quick check-in. We are, again, at session number 4 of 5. So we have this week and next week, and then that will conclude the bulk of the sessions. And we'll talk a little bit more at the end today about what's going to come after that, right? So we wanted to take some time this morning just to review a little bit about what we're expecting for today. And what that means is that we're going to spend today continuing to talk a little bit about skills, around the ORs and reflection and open-ended questions, right? And then talking a little bit about ambivalence. And then we're going to really focus in on practice. So today and next week will really be talking more about practicing and using these skills that we have been learning in the past few weeks. Additionally, we wanted to, have some conversations about participation, and just wanted to reemphasize that this is very interactive. MI is all about communication and how we work with our families, and we talk a lot about that during the family spirit training, when we look at training as health educators or community health workers, and so MI is another way or another skill for our toolbox, right, around communication and engaging our families. And so what that means is that we have to practice what we preach and be as engaged as possible here during these sessions as well. What is really helpful and what is expected is that, if possible, you'll keep your cameras on, or at least when we're doing those breakout sessions, be present and participating, either by phone or by chat. But for our practices, really being able to chime in via verbally is going to be the best. And so I just want to do a quick check-in. I know Susan had said that she doesn't have a microphone available, but we're hoping she can join us by phone. But for everybody else, is there anybody else having any problems with joining us with their camera and or audio? So you can unmute yourself and chime in, or you can use the chat box, but we would like to do a quick check-in to see how everybody's doing with that. So I'm going to give just a moment to gather some responses from everybody. You can use a thumbs up if you're good, or let us know if you have any specific questions.
This is Dawn. Can you hear me, Tara?
Yeah, I sure can.
Oh, hey. So the only thing that's slightly different, I can hear and see, and I can see the screen, is I can't see somewhere I can click and see the gallery view, but maybe it's because it's set on her screen right now. We're doing cameras, so I wanted to see everyone, and for some reason I can only see the speaker.
That's interesting. Let me take a look and see if there's an option that we can change really quickly.
Well, and if I'm the only one, maybe Carla, can you see the gallery view?
I can see the gallery view, but it doesn't pop out like it usually does.
Yeah, I think that it might be in spotlight mode, which I just selected on my screen at the top the gallery view, and then it opened up next to the slides, and I think it's actually a little bit nicer than sometimes when it's not in this mode, the list or the little column of people is actually on top of the slides. So this is kind of nice that it's next to it. So were you able to open that up on the side of the screen? Up at the top where I can change back and forth from the gallery view to speaker view. And then I can scroll through people on the side now. Is that working for anyone else?
Yeah. Well, this is Dawn, and I don't want to like take all the time, but that's how normally I can do it. And I'm on my iPad, which is usually how I'm on it. And I don't have the gallery view selection today. So, but that's okay. Maybe it could just be me. So I just know we're going to use cameras. So I thought, I wanted to see everyone.
Well, I just want to preface that there was a major update this week as well in Zoom. So there are a lot of, what I've noticed since Monday is that there are a lot of little setting changes. So that could definitely be it as well, because I know mine usually also pops out, but it didn't today, and it doesn't look like I can change it like I usually can. So, it could be
No,
a Zoom
that's okay.
thing.
Yeah, and just good to know. That's all. No worries.
Sorry, this is Kate again. I just was looking up at the top where it says you are viewing Kathy Tomlin's screen. If you have that, and then I see view options, and then it's selected side by side mode. And so I think that's what's making the difference, where it's not like a separate window where you see the gallery of people. So you could maybe try unchecking that. That might change it for you.
I think for me, I'm on the iPad, so that it's probably just has less features. But I'm good. Everyone else go back to the check. We can check in with everyone else. We can be like, Dawn is definitely here.
Thank you. All right. So kind of going back to our check-ins, so we just want to emphasize that, especially when we're doing these practices, that we're going to focus on our communication skills, and please, remain present when we go into the breakout rooms. It is a time to practice these skills and come together in small groups. So we expect that you'll be present, and if possible, with having your video and audio engaged, okay? And then if there are any challenges with that, please just let us know either in the chat or, you can contact it. I think you have my number, Carla's number, or whatnot. We can see what we can do to work that out with you. All right, so as we get started, and speaking of check-ins, let's just take a second to ask or to share with us one thing that you took away from last week. So what is one thing that stuck with you since either last week or just in general, these last few weeks that we've been meeting? Would anybody like to share? And I'm happy to volunteer some folks too. I'm pretty good at that. I'm sure you all know that, because you've been with me for a while now. Anybody? Let's see. Okay, let's take a look. So I'm taking a look at our gallery and all of the folks we got on. It looks like we have Madeline who's trying to connect to the audio. So good luck, Madeline. If you have an issue, let us know. But in general, let's ask one of my fellow Taras. Would you mind unmuting or letting us know in the chat box one thing that you took away from the last couple weeks? So Tara Novak or Tara Rasmussen, little crew we got of Taras going on in Minnesota. Hi, Tara.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, my mic is working. I just was making sure.
Thanks for unmuting. Would you mind sharing with us, Tara, one thing that you took away so far from the training or from last week in particular?
Unfortunately, I had to take last week off, so I was unable to make that training. So, yeah.
That's okay. That's great. And so if there's anything you want to share from any of you were able to join us. Tara Novak, I see you unmuted. would you
Yep.
mind sharing?
I think the coolest thing that I've taken away is just hearing, everybody else's stories as well, and realizing that, hey, we're not it's not different, it's like we're all going through the kind of like the same thing right now. And it's I know sometimes that it can feel like, well, I myself sometimes feel like I don't know what to do, and I'm trying to help all of our members and trying to get their needs met, and at the same time trying to, take care of my own family too. And it helps to hear from everyone else, that their programs as well, we're just all trying really hard right now. And it's comforting, I guess, for me.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of we're all in this together, even if we can't be together in person as much as we would prefer, right? Or we would hope to be. And we're kind of adapting and adjusting and trying to be as flexible as we can, our little reeds in the wind, going with where it takes us. So thank you so much, Tara. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you taking the chance to share that. So thanks again. And then anybody else? Would anybody else like to chime in?
This is Dawn, and I did get to the Vic review, but if some of you may know, I'm not a home visitor. I oversee home visiting, so I don't have that experience that all of you have, but I do have a 22-year-old daughter. And I think there's so many kind of aha moments, and I was sharing this last week with the group, is that, the person has to want to work. So one time my daughter very lovingly told me, she said, "Mom, you're an excellent problem solver if someone cares at all about the problem." and so I think when we were talking about some of this stuff in the last few sessions, I've been thinking about that, right? Like I can come up with all kinds of solutions or guidance, and of course I want the best for her, but she has to want to do it. So I suppose from a parenting view, I really related to a lot of what we were talking about, and maybe building skills as I head into parenting a 20-year-old.
We weren't supposed to be parenting 20-year-olds, right? I feel the same thing about mine. Like, shoot, I still got to do this?
I am there with you with the 20-year-old. But it's more about, like, I don't want to hear about any solutions. You're just supposed to listen to me and not say anything. Which is really a huge part of this, too, is just, like, listening.
Yeah.
And not offering any solutions and empowering. So I guess I would chime in with my takeaway, even though I missed last week, has been just I've taken quite a bit of like transformational coaching, but this is like a different lens, and it's been really interesting to see like the different perspective on it. And then just to like have my mind like think about it on this level, because on some levels I'm just doing it like as a routine now, but it's interesting to like even think about it, to like dive into it deeper. So it's nice to like think about like what I want, what to go with it, like what are my goals in developing my skills around it, because I would like it to go even, deeper. So that's my takeaway. And the 20-year-old thing, oof, they're hard. Brains are still developing.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think, too, going back to, and we'll talk more about reflection today, but, we are here, and Kathy made the comment in the chat box about, we're not here to set a goal for them, right? And in Family Spirit, we talk about building up the skill for goals. We're health educators or community health workers and home visitors, so we're in this to help. And I know for me, when I was doing home visits, at the beginning, that is automatically where I went. You could tell me what's going on, and I could be listing in my head 10 steps that you should take to fix that situation. But really, that's not effective, right? And so here with the motivational interviewing, we're really learning how to kind of be that that mirror for our families, and help them bounce things off of us and process so that they can develop their own ideas for change if that is what they want to do, right? So thank you for sharing that. And then Joe, did you want to chime in as our last person? I know you were trying to talk, but it didn't hear you. Oh, we still can't hear you, my dear. Sorry. If you check the little arrow next to the microphone, at the bottom, you might just need to choose your microphone. That's usually what happens. We'll let you get that figured out. Okay, great. Well, thanks for your, reflections from last week and or the last, coming up to this point since we started. And I know some of us have been here for all of the sessions, and then there are some of us who have joined just as we can, and that's okay. We appreciate, any time that you can make for, gathering with the community of practice in general, but just especially during this training. So thank you for that. The next thing we wanted to do was kind of just do a confidence check-in. So this is a little tool that you're going to use with your families as well, but we're also going to use this with us as trainees. So Dr. Tallman, I don't know if you want to pull up that confidence ruler. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And we can take a look at that and we can share how we're feeling kind of with these skills, right? These different components to MI and where we are on those spectrums of comfort level, and what do we need to do to increase our comfort, right? And I imagine that practice is probably going to come up, but we'll take a look at that and kind of think more strategically there.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now. Hold on.
Perfect. Okay, so this confidence ruler, okay, I got to be honest, it's on my husband all the time. Because it's hard. He's often ambivalent about a lot of things, like, oh, I don't know, So I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at it. Let's talk about it. And it's really helpful.
Tara, this was developed for drinking drug use. So where it says your right here, you would just substitute the behavior for whatever you want to measure.
Great. So we'll put it in, I can put it into a little bit different perspective for us. So we're talking to a family, right? We'll talk about our own personal confidence in a second, but we'll just frame it in terms of the family, right? So we're talking with a family and they're saying that, I really want to stop kind of yelling at my kids, right? They do something wrong and I kind of not lose control, but I get upset and I yell. And I want to stop doing that. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Tallman, can you share that again?
Yeah, I'm going to change it as you're talking, so give me a second. Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no worries. So, we're talking with families and they say, I want to stop yelling at my kids all the time, right? And then, so you might, so you're going to go through this process of kind of developing out what goal looks like. And then, we're going to gauge about, what is their commitment or how ready do they feel? So then you say, what is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to take this next step to stop yelling at your kids, right? And then once they say like, oh, okay, well, I know I need to do it, but I don't really know how, or I still just get so mad. So I'm going to say I have a 5 or a 6. Right. And so then I think Dr. Tallman, you can definitely step in. But you ask these other questions to kind of unpack that a little bit. So why not a 4 or 3? And they might say, well, because I know how important it is to not yell at your kids. I was yelled at as a child, and so I really don't want to do that for my kids. Okay, great. So it is important to you. And then you need to say, like, well, how can we move it 5 to a 7? How can we kind of nudge this a little bit more for you and your confidence level of making this change? And then they might say, well, I don't know what an example would be, but, and then you can unpack that a little bit more. And it's really helpful for them to start thinking about, their confidence in making a change, and what they need to be more confident. And then also it was really helpful for us as home visitors to think about how we can best support them in achieving their own goals, right? And we also know kind of where they're at. So, I mean, if somebody says, I'm a 2 or 3, I'm not going to push personally in my opinion, I'm not going to push super hard because they're not quite there yet. And that's okay. But maybe next time when I come out, they'll be a little bit higher, and then we can talk more about that. I hope that makes sense a little bit to everybody. And when we're using this confidence ruler, and I think that for me, when I took MI years and years ago, this is probably the big I pulled out of it that I use most often and that I used with my families to help me gauge, where they were at and help them think about what they needed to move farther along that ruler of confidence, right? So, Dr. Tallman, do you have is there another one that is related to using the oars? Is that what that is that I saw?
Well, let's do a quick role play on this.
Okay.
To demonstrate. The visual is helpful when you're working with somebody. It's nice to have a visual, but you don't have to have the visual. So let's just do a quick role play. And there's 3 components to this. And what we're doing in this is we're assessing readiness. And so I'll talk about it at the other end of it. But Tara, if you wouldn't mind, let's just do a quick role play on it. And we'll use its importance, confidence, and then readiness. And those are the 3 components. So let's just do it really quickly, just to show what it would sound like. You can actually have the paper in front of you, and like you said, you can measure it from one time together to the next, just see if there's any progress. So you pick the scenario, and then we'll just dive into it without setting too much context, just to demonstrate how that would work. And what I'd like people to do is listen for the oars. Listen for those particular types of communication skills that help motivate people and help people feel connected in wanting to continue the conversation. All right, Tara, so what's our scenario? If you could just, off the top of your head, just pick something.
Well, I'm going to pretend I'm a mom and our home visiting. So
Okay.
I'm going to say that, sorry, just 2 seconds. I'm just thinking about something common that I would hear come up.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, I want to get the kids into a routine of getting up at a decent time every morning. I need to help my family get into like a regular routine because school's starting next week.
Okay, so the focus is that you need a little more structure for morning time. And particularly, it sounds like wake up time, getting people to get out of bed, get going, get ready for the day.
Yes, my older daughter is 7. She's going to start school next week, and we just go to bed whenever. So sometimes it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we sleep until 12. Sometimes you come over to visit us, and we're still just getting out of bed, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So
yeah,
no, I'm afraid she's not. I would need to get her up in the morning on time.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of, our schedules are getting all messed up because of, a lot of people staying at home because of the virus scare. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so would you be willing to do a little bit of a tool? We call them rulers, and they're basically ways to measure where you're at in making that change of creating more structure for people to get up in the morning. Would you be willing to do that with me right
Sure.
now?
Sure.
Okay. So on a scale of, I'm going to do this as a pause. You can pull that visual of that ruler out at that point and show them while you're talking them through it, or you could just do it conversationally. It just depends on what you think is best. So on a scale, we have 3 scales. One's an importance scale, one's a confidence scale, and then that tells me how ready you are to make that adjustment. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how important is it for you to create a structure where your family gets up in the morning and gets ready for the day? With 0 being not important at all and 10 being the most important thing in my life right now.
Well, it's definitely not the most important thing in my life. And I mean, to be honest with you, I really don't see a problem with us going to bed late and then just getting up whenever we get up. I mean, it works for the baby, but for my daughter, I know we have to start school soon. So I would say probably like a 4 or 5, maybe like a 5 or 6. Yeah, maybe like a 5 or 6.
5 or 6. So you just added something really important, and that is that the reason that it's really important to you now, it's really for your other child, not the baby, but your daughter.
Yeah.
So tell me why you picked 5 or 6.
Because like I said, I know she needs to get up ready for school, and that's going to be like a change for us. But I mean, it really doesn't make a big deal if we if we stay up late and get up when we get up. I kind of like not having to worry about a lot of stuff. So, but I know that it's good. It's a healthy thing, so I kind of just keep going back and forth. Like, got to do it for my daughter, but I really like being able to go to bed when I want and wake up when I want. So, or when we want, as a family. So
it adds a little bit of stress in your life when you have to create that change, when it's just sometimes easier just to continue to do what you're doing. Seems less stressful on you.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you do know that it's healthy for your family and for your daughter, particularly, to make that change. So you kind of have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about routines and how they're important, and we kind of do have a routine. It's just not early routine.
Right. Yeah, so you do have some structure. It's not like you're structureless, and it works for the family right now. It's just anticipating the fall coming and on what the needs of the family are, and particularly you're with your daughter. You are recognizing that making that adjustment would be important for her particularly. Yeah. Tell me why you didn't pick a 2 or 3.
Well, like I said, because I want my daughter to do well in school. She's going to be in 1st grade this year. So, it's not kindergarten. There's no naps. Well, I guess, and it's a little bit different this year too, because she's going to be at home, and that it might be a little bit harder to get into the routine. I'm not sure yet what it'll look like, but I definitely want her to be ready for school.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns in terms of doing school at home, and hey, 1st grade, that's a big deal. What would it take for you to move up 1 step? Like you said 5 or 6, so 6 or 7.
I think it would take me kind of knowing when she's supposed to start school. Like, we don't have all those details yet, so I don't really know the time what time we need to be ready by. And so I don't really know a lot about that stuff. I knew I could start working on it. It would be a lot easier to start working on getting in the habit of getting up earlier. Yeah,
getting more information would help you plan better. Mm-hmm. And not knowing is stressful in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's move on to confidence. Is that a good time? Is it a good time for us to talk about how confident you feel
Sure.
about making this change? Okay. So same kind of scale and time out. You can pull up the confidence ruler at this point and show them or not. On a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are you that if you decided to make that adjustment, that you would be able to make the adjustment, with 0 being low confidence or none, and 10 being ultimate, oh, no problem?
I've never been a morning person.
Mm-hmm.
And, we kind of just go to bed when we fall asleep. Like sometimes it's in front of the TV, or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know how well it's going to work, but I would say, in terms of confidence, maybe around the same, like a 5 or 6.
5 or 6, yeah. So I'm hearing some doubt that you have about it. It doesn't naturally flow with your lifestyle to do this change, and yet it's important to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me why you picked a 5 or a 6.
I think just because, like you said, I know that it's important. I want my daughter to be ready for school. But it's just outside, I just am not used to it. So I don't know how long to adapt, and I don't want to be cranky because I'm getting up earlier than I usually do. So I just am not sure how well we're going to adapt to it. But I mean, whatever. We'll do it. It'll be fine. I think it'll just take a little while.
Yeah, it takes some time to make those kind of sleep adjustments for sure. And you haven't made the decision yet to do it, but time is coming where you need to make a decision. And at this point, you're leaning into, for the sake of your daughter's education and your family life, you are leaning into making that change, but you haven't decided yet. So why did you pick, why not a lower number, 4 or 5?
Well, because it's important to me. So I whether I feel like I can do it or not, I got to do it. And also too, I know if I had to work, when I get a job, when the baby gets a little older, I will have to potentially get up early. And so it's not impossible. I could do it, right? I'm just not sure yet how long it'll take for me to get used to it, or for us to get used to it.
Right, yeah. So it's really getting over the hurdle of the adjustment, making the adjustment. It sounds like you're pretty motivated to go ahead and try it, and you have to do it. It's just that hurdle of getting into the structure of it. And you're also indicating that once you do it, it'll be fine. It won't be preferable, but it will be fine. So what would it take for you to move up a number, maybe a 7?
I think probably making a date to start.
Yeah.
That way I can kind of plan and think more about what it's going to take to get up earlier, like what we have to do.
So you're doing that. You're kind of doing that right now, aren't you? You're trying to think it through and figure it out. Have you already created a date in your mind, or several dates in your mind that you've thought about?
Well, I mean, I think it's always easy to do things on Mondays.
Yeah.
And but today's Wednesday, and that's I don't know. I guess I keep thinking well, we could just start on Monday, but then she starts school next week. So I guess, and then the weekend's coming. So I don't really know. We'll probably just start on Monday. Yeah. That's probably what we'll do.
And that's when school starts?
School starts next Thursday.
Oh, so it sounds like you have a little bit of time to get used to that adjustment. All right. Well, so if we were to intersect those two numbers, that would kind of give you a sense of how ready you are to take action. And you've mentioned several reasons why it'd be easier to not have to do it. It's just you're used to a particular schedule. You like the flexibility of that schedule. You're not a morning person, and sounds like your family isn't either. There's some advantages to not making the change. And on the other hand, you're feeling some pressure to make the change because of the well-being of your daughter's education and your family life. And also the recognition that at some point you're going to need to make an adjustment to start work again, or to work from home, whichever happens first. Anything else that's important to you that we should highlight?
I don't think so. Not right now.
Okay. So where does that leave you right now? What steps might you take right now to move in the direction of getting ready for school and adjusting your sleep schedule?
Well, I think just, planning on starting on Sunday night so that we can wake up early Monday morning. But talking to my daughter about it so that she's kind of aware of what's going on. And then, I don't know, maybe I could start before Monday, start kind of going to bed a little earlier, or kind of, that by the time Sunday comes, I can go to bed on time. So that we kind of get a little bit in the habit. I'm not sure, but I think mostly just talking to my daughter about it and preparing her.
Yeah. So between now and Sunday night, the main thing is to talk to your daughter to let her know what's coming, and to mentally prepare her as well as to prepare the rest of your family. And then when Sunday night comes around, that you have a kind of in mind a bedtime that you need to follow, and then set the alarm clock and make those moves. But first things first. So what's the likelihood that you'll follow through on a scale of 0 to 10?
I think it's pretty likely. I would say like a 9. Like, we have to do it because she has to get into the habit.
Mm-hmm.
So we will do it. We will do it. It'll probably I would say an 8 or a 9.
That's pretty likely then. All right. Well, let's check in with that next time and see how you did. And there's, by the way, there's no right or wrong. It just is what it is when it comes to what you're capable of doing and what you want to do. And it's important to remember the reasons why you would want to do it. And then also to figure out, maybe work into your daily schedule. Think about working into your daily schedule some relief from having to get up early in the morning, like on the weekends or something, if it doesn't disrupt your family too much. But there's, it doesn't I guess what I'm suggesting, it doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule. It sounds like you've done some pretty good processing of this, and you're leaning more towards making that change for the benefit of everybody, really. So thank you for taking the time to do that with me.
So thank you. Thanks for helping me walk through it.
You bet. Okay.
Awesome.
So
end scene.
End scene, right? Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. Thanks, Dr. And I think to our check-in, maybe we can ask everybody, we can put up that confidence alert, ask everybody how they are feeling, how their confidence is, that they are, either in their skills or just that the likelihood of kind of how confident they are that they'll be able to bring this back into the work that they're doing with families. And so, just that on that scale of 1 to 10, use the chat, you could unmute, but let's kind of get a picture of where everybody's at. So, so let's take a moment to do that. So I guess the question will be, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you'll be able to kind of take this back to the work that you're doing right now? So Susan and Tara says a 5. That's really good. Let's hear for some other folks. Kathy says 5. Okay, 5 from Amy. Nidra, she says a 6. A little bump there. Joe feels like he's at a 6. Oh, Janelle, she's rocking it. She's an 8. She's already a seasoned MI person, though. Lindsay is a 6. Great. Crystal or Hanatu, how about for you guys? Cedar, Crystal says a 6. Okay. Michelle's a 5. Wonderful. So I think we're all kind of in this like, hey, we got this down a little bit, but we still have a little bit farther to go. So along the same lines, why don't you, from everybody, let's hear, a comment about what would take it, how can we take it to a higher level? What do we need to do to go up one or go up a couple of ticks? Serene's an 8. So Serene and Janelle, they're going to be our mentors for this group, right?
Mm-hmm. Practice.
So what do we need to move it to a higher level? Practices, Carla. Chris, I don't know if we've heard from you, Chris. What do you think? Okay. So Amy says sometimes you get into the conversation and they're not on your mind, right? Those questions. That's a great point. And Janelle says role play. Well, we're going to do lots of that, Jill. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Okay. So luckily everybody's, we are on the same page that we've learned a little bit about this. We're feeling, somewhat confident, and we're invested in going, moving up this ruler of confidence. And we generally know that we need to practice these skills. And so this is really great because this kind of leads us into the point that we're going to talk about today. And then, going into the next session, and then what comes after we conclude as the larger group, right? Amy says creating a cheat sheet to keep with me. You know what, Amy, that's something that I think is a really great idea. Maybe we can work together on that, or if you come up with something, you can share it and we can make, perhaps get it printed and laminated and share with the entire group, right?
Excuse me for interrupting, but I did give you a scripted version of this in the handouts. You might want to check it out to see if it makes sense or adapt it to make it more user-friendly for your environment.
Definitely.
Assessing Readiness is what it's called. It came out in the handouts this week, but it was also in the handouts earlier in the sessions. Feel free to just make it your own.
Great. So I think that kind of concludes our check-in. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in that. And thanks, Dr. Talman, for taking us through kind of what using those rulers looks like. Because I think, like I said in the beginning, that's probably one thing I took away, kind of that idea. Because for me, assessing kind of where my client was at really helped me help them or support them. So I found that that piece was really helpful. Then at this point, I think we're going to turn it over a little bit, or change course a little bit, Dr. Tomlin, and to talk about cultural relevance of motivational interviewing.
Yeah, and this segment would require everyone's thoughts and participation. It's not so much what I say; it's just what everybody thinks. So I'll pull it up on the slideshow, and then I appreciate everybody's participation. But we're going to have let's see if I can get this going, a discussion of how MI relates to culture and change. And then that's the rest of our agenda. We've done some demonstration and practice so far. I train all over the U.S. With different indigenous peoples. And so there, in my view, there's a lot of different customs and traditions that are unique to particular parts of the country. So I'm not the expert when it comes to the Midwest. So definitely I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about this. Cultural language and the concepts of change, using the word change. The ambivalence of practicing old and new ways, traditional ways, I got a little typo there, and Western ways. And what's my understanding in relationship to change, transitions, and loss, and anticipation of changes, both natural and sought after. So there are natural changes that we experience that I believe Susan walked us through last time. And then there's changes that we seek, and then there's changes that are imposed upon us. And so from a cultural perspective, what are people's thoughts about how that is affecting the community, yourself as a person from the culture, as well as how you think, from your understanding, how you think that works? Because there is a lot of language in motivational interviewing that may not translate to the particular community that you're coming from. So this is kind of a discussion slide, and then I'll move into something else later. So I'd be interested to have you share either by taking your mic off and or we'll follow your comments in the chat box. So first is the notion of the word change, and how that might be culturally adapted, the ambivalence about old and new ways, and how you personally experience change. What do you go through, both natural, sought after, and imposed upon, like the virus is an imposed upon change, where we have to stay home or work from home or whatever. So what are people's thoughts about that? I'm going to mute myself, so
Dr. Tomlin, would you mind leaving that that up there so that, because I think it's helpful for people to refer back to those questions.
One thing that I really like about how the Family Spirit curriculum addresses change is that it understands the cultural implications, right? Historically, many of the changes that were not natural that American Indians lived through were imposed upon, right? With colonization, our whole society changed, and those are all imposed upon changes. So change just for the sake of change has not always been a positive concept, right? And so the vision tool in the Family Spirit curriculum talks about it as it promotes goal setting. So they don't really even use the word change. They just talk about goal setting and achieving your heart's desire. And we know as home visitors that really promotes self-esteem and it empowers our clients. So it may be just a matter of not changing how we, even adapting the MI process itself, but just in our minds and for our clients that are going through this process, really talking about goal setting and achieving your heart's desire. I just know as a home visitor that approach was really helpful for me. And also the concept that sometimes our clients are very vulnerable, and so there might be a lot of changes that we could see that they would be beneficial to make, right? But like you all talked about earlier in the chat box, it's really important that those changes come from within the client, that those are self-identified changes. It's not me saying you need to get back to school. It's the client identifying what those changes are and then empowering them, like just one small change is necessary, just one small thing is necessary to help people embrace that mindset change. Just as a home visitor, for me, that was really powerful. Like, oh my gosh, how you know, how am I going to really help this 16-year-old girl that's homeless, experiencing substance use, and is a high school dropout? It's very overwhelming, as for me even. And so just helping her to identify what she wants to change and what that looks like, and just even little tiny steps are progress.
Nidra, can you expand a little bit on what you think that linear change looks like versus like circular or cyclical change?
I was thinking about a lot of times when we're working with families that we want them to change from A to B. Right now, you need to be able to do this in order to achieve that. And we have to think about culturally, change is going to be more circular because there's things that are going to happen within that time frame of the change that might give you step back. For instance, for us, it might be having an issue with the landlord and a possibility of eviction. So that change of saying, I want to make sure that I'm doing such and so for my child, that it's not a straight line. It's not going to happen in a linear way. It's going to happen because of a lot of cultural factors getting in the way and giving you steps back and another step forward and 6 steps back, and keeping that in mind when we're thinking about supporting change with our families.
That's a great point. Thank you. And I think we see that a lot too when we're working with families, is that change is not just, we're not just going forward all the time. Sometimes, we see that there's an ebb and flow, right? And then that's okay. And I think we see a lot in Western culture that you always need to be moving forward. But that's not always what it looks like, and that's okay. Susan says in the chat box, so she said that change has always been a part of culture, naturally, with the change of the seasons and transitioning during each of those seasons. And then today, the change of the seasons is still a process that we're experiencing, but without transitioning from one location to the other. And then, there's another change for us. It's going from, with age, it's going from infancy to childhood to adulthood, and then as elders. Thank you, Susan. Carla, I know you had some great resources around, or not resources, but just some great thoughts around this and the cultural piece. Did you share those quotes that you had?
Sure. And I think it's really just, I just really wanted to honor what Susan had brought up last week about framing these changes. And then I like how Dr. Tomlin added on that, like, change isn't as a whole isn't a bad thing. Like Susan has emphasized, we experience natural changes in our lives every day, with the change of the seasons, the change of getting older, the change from one stage of life to another. But just to expand that and to open up. So, historically, even though American Indians are incredibly diverse across Turtle Island, we all ended up developing societies with really well-defined roles, responsibilities, government systems, religious rights, social behaviors, support, and consensus played a major role in this. So they kind of, as a whole in the culture, that the American Indian values lean towards kind of a cosmic identity, if you will, a harmony of the individual with the tribe with the land with the spirit of the universe. And central to this quest for harmony is a sense of constancy, the timelessness and predictability of nature as the foundation of existence. As Susan said last week, we honor these natural changes. And one American Indian author that I really like, his name is Herring, he said this circle, as Nidra alluded to, this circle or cycle symbolizes eternity, one reality, and it transcends everything, and giving respect to everything and understanding that passage of time. So in addition, the family is recognized as a cornerstone of American Indian society. It's the way that our teachings and values are passed down that guide human behavior. In Anglo culture, there is an expectation of change from one generation to the next. Like, I want my kids to do better than me, or I'll let them choose their own religion when they get older. But in many traditional, especially more traditional of our cultures, there's an expectation that the generation will repeat themselves and that traditions and beliefs will continue, and change just for the sake of change might feel like it's interrupting that process. So when you're using this tool with American Indian participants and discuss it as a way to change, it may not be with the same context. And so you may, as you're talking about change, to bring in those concepts of natural changes and imposed changes. If you see a family being really reluctant. And again, I really like the vision tool and how the vision tool, again, promotes goal setting and achieving your heart's desire. And we know, again, that this is really promoting self-esteem and empowers our participants. But it doesn't focus on change as the ultimate goal. You know, and again, I just want to stress that kind of ambivalence too that we feel as home visitors using a new tool. So I just remember when I started using and incorporating more motivational interviewing concepts into my work, it felt like a new way of communicating. It didn't always feel authentic, but it just got to be practice. We talked about practice as the way to overcome our ambivalence and overcome our uncertainty with this. So yeah, thank you for letting me share. I just, I as a home visitor for 20 plus years, I've truly incorporated the concepts of motivational interviewing into my practice, and I found it incredibly helpful to understand my clients' barriers, their ambivalence, and even the most reluctant clients. I just recall one who she was a client who would be very, she would almost, when we talk about MA, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you feel to make that change? And I was trying to be really engaging and such, and she would always kind of roll her eyes at me when I'd ask those questions. But by the end of our time together, it's really not even by the end. So by the time her baby was 9 months old, she greeted me at the door like, I'm at a 5. I wouldn't even ask her, but she started framing it herself. And it was a really cool way for not just to facilitate change, but for her to really to understand what she felt her barriers were and to be kind of a check-in with herself, right? In moments of crisis, it was a concrete tool that she could use to check in with herself and understand, where am I in this process? So thank you for letting me share my thoughts.
That's great, Carla. Thank you.
There's a question: how do we support families through forced change imposed by systems? That's a really good question.
Excellent question. Any thoughts from anybody? Joe?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
High five!
Cool. Thanks. Took me a while to get that back online. But, you know, there's a number of things I was going to say. What was the question again, Dr. Tomlin, that you just mentioned? Otherwise,
Well, this,
I was going to mention.
yeah, this is from Serene. How do we support families through forced change imposed by systems?
So the question I have, or my response to the thoughts I've had on this whole subject is really like our approach to it. You know, during our last meeting, you were talking about micro skills and being mindful of how we use them. And you did I noticed immediately. So with all of my clients, I really try to emulate through myself and my own actions the 7 teachings that my community, you know, the teachings revolve around. And the top one is respect. And I feel like you do that, and you did that right at the way in the simulation you and Tara did by, you know, like you mentioned, asking for permission to discuss those thoughts or processes, and then focusing on strength and really using the oars to navigate through the conversation using those micro skills, which for me, I feel like it is good to have these tools to have somebody look at and give like just kind of an objective number to say where you're at. And even in that one conversation, you can kind of lay out those baby steps of climbing up to your confidence level of completing that talk. But being mindful of listening to, and one thing I need to be better about is understanding the change talk I'm hearing, and again, using the oars, reflecting in the right way, and affirmations are something that I really try to leave at the end, but I try to make my affirmation something that isn't feel like it's patronizing to the person or you know, kind of giving them, like, building up false promises. But I feel like it's culturally respectful, even for those who are dealing, like, there are a lot of people who, like, change could mean a lot of things for a lot of them, and the slightest change could be something that's very, very daunting, you know, and that could come up with all kinds of examples, you know, but I feel like the approach, starting with, like, you know, the teaching of respect and asking for permission to do these conversations, but then executing the skill of asking the right open-ended questions in a way that makes the person feel comfortable enough to ask them. Let them, like you said, let them guide where the conversation goes, and then set their own goals and at their own pace, you know, their desires, whatever it is that they want, but giving them permission to, like, do so. And asking permission yourself, I feel like, is a humbling thing to do, just to know that you're there. So you're not there to, like, impose anything on them whatsoever. You're there to listen to what they're saying and then help work with them. And it's not, and it's not sneaky in the sense where you're really trying to be mindful of, like, what they're saying and guide them in that direction. But I mean, you're transparent, but just transparent enough where they don't even realize, like, wow, I'm working this out through my own mind, and you know, we're helping with that. But it is them who is able to make those decisions, and, you know, hopefully establish some self-efficacy along the way. And again, as they're building up that confidence, you know, strengthens areas that they're already had high strengths in, and improving on the ones that they wanted to change for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
What I'm thinking about is how to use Susan's comments and Serene's question and Carla's vision. It's a vision, you know, it's like a big picture. And how do you use those thoughts to use MI? You know, it's sort of like, here's a good example of an open-ended question, and maybe you might want to practice it in the smaller groups after we take our break. But what if you entered in a conversation and just said, you know, you're at, you know, you've gone through childhood, you know, you're now in the role of parent, and what is your heart's desire right now? You know, as an example, so you're kind of identifying where they're at in the cycle of change, the natural cycle of change. And you say something like, what is your heart's desire right now? So creating open-ended questions that speak to the culture, that speak to the bigger picture for where they're at in the life cycle. So that's some thoughts that I had listening to people. In terms of, and this is a great open-ended question, how do we support families through forced change imposed by systems? And that's a great question, like, when right now our system across the board is the government or the local government telling us where we can go and what we need to do behaviorally with the masks, and how to protect your families, how to protect yourself. And my thought is, well, what's the change? You know, what's being imposed upon a family, and what's their reaction to that, which MI can certainly help somebody walk through that. And then what is my, how open am I to complying with that change? You know, is that a good change, a bad change? And if I did the change, what would be the benefits and what would I lose? And so if I had a family that said, why do I have to do X, Y, or Z? I'd be walking them through that in terms of, well, what is your heart's desire related to this request for you to do something different? And if it's imposed upon you, that implies that I can't get out of it, you know, that I have to do something. Yet, there are plenty of people that don't stay home, that don't wear masks. So then it boils down to, am I going to make this change for the betterment of my family, my community? If, you know, and what are the benefits and what are the losses? What am I losing and what am I gaining as a result of making those types of changes? And let's see what Susan says. Seven Grandfathers' teachings may need to be taught and or retaught for the youngest generation in our community, although most families know and understand, respect, and love. So yeah, what if you're talking to a young person who doesn't know their culture? What if they don't understand their culture? Are they open to learning? I live and work in an urban setting. A lot of the Native people I run into don't know their tribe. They're affiliated, but they don't know the customs. They don't know the traditions. They don't have any access to elders. They don't have that big picture. And yet, when they get connected to it, the healthy aspects of it, they tend to do better. But there's a lot of people that reject that because of the trauma that they've experienced in their life. And yet the healthy side of the culture is so strong. How do we engage people that it would be helpful for them to know the healthy side of the culture? A lot of them don't, they just think their tribe is an alcoholic tribe. They don't know that there's the seven teachings, that there's they don't have a sense of their own empowerment, their own strengths, their own center. They don't have a spiritual practice. They're not doing any native practices, and so they're lost. They're lost in the world, and they're treated differently. They're involved in the dominant culture, whatever that is nowadays, but they're not accepted. They experience a lot of prejudice and rejection. So teaching people about, connecting them with the culture, connecting them with, speaking to them in a way that makes sense to them, to help them through whatever it is that's being imposed upon them. And anchoring it into the traditions, the customs, and the values of their tribal community. And it's different, I've been around a lot of different Alaskan villagers and Northwest Indians, Southwest Indian. I've been around all different communities, Northern California tribes, and they're different, but they're like. So that's so how is their particular affiliation with their particular history going to help them heal from whatever is going on?
That's kind of hard in the community that I'm serving and work in, because like Little Earth has over 33 plus tribal affiliations within the community. And so to be able to talk about that or draw that, it becomes really complicated. Like even to set up wet lodge or anything was really, really difficult, because there's all these different beliefs on how to do it. And so that's been like a huge hurdle, like how to reconnect culturally in a way that's respecting multiple like tribal affiliations. It just has been an interesting ongoing dialogue.
I don't know how to.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Laurel. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I think that in regards to the teachings, adding a lot of my thoughts with the comments and questions put together, I think really going back in and asking where they're at and asking what, with any person, regardless of where they are coming from, usually there's some part of a culture or some practice that's stuck with them throughout the years. And ask what, even if it's what would your mom say, what would your great grandma say, what would your going back, and even if you're going back to way back in history to chiefs, to warriors, how do you think they would have adjusted this? What do you think their thought process would have been with this new modern change that they're being asked or told to make? So making those connections, even if it's a back, because there are those genetic connections that are still there, and those cultural pieces are still there somewhere, that we're born with them. We don't shed it. So just making some type of homage to that, I think, is going to be very beneficial. And when you're dealing with a lot of, in an urban setting, having to deal with a lot of different tribes and practices, from going to ceremony throughout the country, it has been very make an acknowledgement of the tribe and who they are, and giving thanks to the person that has that knowledge, acknowledging it and giving thanks to having them to share it with the community there, and having it welcomed. And I know that medicine men and women have been very open about saying, I'm not the person, I'm not the God, I just connect the dots for you guys. And so I'm only doing this the best way I know how, and making acknowledgement to that. We're doing the best we know how here. And maybe with this collective knowledge, we can figure something out here for working with what we have. And then those systematic, those forced changes that were brought up earlier, I just wanted to note that I know just from experience working with a lot of people where they're forced to make some change, is not beating around the bush about it. So when there's a forced change, being straight up with them on what it is, but then going back and saying, okay, how do you feel about this forced change? Where are you at on this level of this forced change? And then going through using that measurements piece to see what's going to get you to this. And so that's all.
Can I ask you a question, Laurel? When you've done that, like how is your response when you've been like straight up with families, and how do you just, because it feels like the role that you've established kind of shifts during that forced change, and how do you balance that?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding completely, but I think how the forced change is just being honest and with them and straightforward with what the expectations are. And really they have to, at some point, have to have some type of buy-in, regardless if we're learning motivational interviewing or a new program. There has to be that buy-in from the person learning or whatever it is, and figuring out where they're at on that level can really help you navigate how to have that conversation, what pieces you need to hone in on, has been helpful.
Can you hear me okay, Laurel? Okay, and everyone, so yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I just wanted to mention something that I do kind of as a gesture, we did at least before COVID, to really get, a connection and dialogue established with my clients. And we try to be as culturally appropriate as we can for that first meeting. And we always try to not overwhelm people, because we're talking about our services and how it would work with them. And then also their discharge plan, how long are we going to be working together? So we try to be transparent about everything right up front. And even mentioning, I'm I'm a mandated reporter in talking about all that. And I give them to call my supervisor if they have any issues with me, a concern for them. But then I always try to end the conversation, because at some point, usually in the first couple meetings, we do talk about where they're at, if they're religious or spiritual or any beliefs that they would like me to consider. But I always ask them if it's okay, just as whether they're traditional or not. If I can leave them, it's just kind of a small gesture to say thank you. So I will say, miigwech, the Ojibwe word for thank you. And then our team oftentimes will go out and harvest kinnikinnick or red willow and do it our way. And I'll explain that this is just something that we've harvested, and we try to give it the traditional form of tobacco. And I even pulled in a paper that has its affirmations in Ojibwe. So, she is strong, she is important. And I can fold it up into a paper, and hand them that tobacco and say, thank you for inviting me into your home. Thank you for sharing so much of your personal life and story with me, and for allowing me to be part of that journey going with you down the road. And after everything we talk about, I feel like that's one thing that hopefully sticks with them, to know that that's just a gesture on my end of trying to be just wrap all of the teachings, respect, honesty, truth, and humility, at the same time, strength. It takes a lot to be honest in all of those things, especially when there are things to hide. That's just a gesture that I try to leave people with. And I'm not Native myself, I'm technically an outsider in that sense, but I'm drawn to the teachings, and that's a whole nother personal story, but that's something that I feel like so many of the Ojibwe teachings have it right. If we're going to have a symbiotic relationship and be stewards for the world around us, these teachings are really good ones to follow, that everyone can share in our actions toward each other. But that a lot of times is my one way. And I even tell them, if you're interested in more medicines, this is the kinnikinnick, but if you want the sage, the sweetgrass, the cedar, and you want to talk about those more down the road, I'll let you know what I've been taught. But, I'm not a teacher in the sense, but I love to hear people's stories. And that really opens up a great doorway for dialogue down the road, and really leaving them with that. I know most people, I see them holding on to that kinnikinnick and taking it. And I can feel, you can literally almost feel the gratitude with those who know how to use it. But even the excitement with those who are learning, and again, it's a journey that we're all kind of taking in at different levels of, and that's the one way that I try to connect and show that from a humble standpoint, I try to. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Another one, I've heard you used a lot of the Ojibwe language, and I just wanted to thank you for that, because a lot of that, even language, using the language of the local community is also very important. You're trying your best. So for me, I'm Navajo, but we have our neighboring Paiute and Hopi tribes here. So we acknowledge their way of saying thank you in certain things, and some of their practices that we do just to have that to build those relationships with them. We do practice, for example, when we are invited to a Hopi ceremony, the boys always bring meat no matter what it is, and the girls will always bring something baked. So things like that, just little gestures, even the language, and that is very important. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Great. Well, I think we have a little bit of time left. Dr. Tallman, do you think that a good chance to maybe practice, go into the breakouts before we're done, to practice really shortly, maybe some open-ended questions?
Yes. What would be, do you just want to go in and do that? What are you thinking?
Well, I think if you want to pull up your slides, we can talk a little bit about open-ended questions. I think you had something in there. And I think this is a skill that we're pretty familiar with in general, right? Because we're in this work, and we know what it's like to sit with clients who you know, especially I think too, some of us work with younger folks, and you know, it's sometimes hard to get that question or get that conversation open and flowing. And so it looks like one of the core concepts for MI at ORS, and that first O in the ORS is open-ended questions.
Yeah.
So, you know, we wanted to talk about a little bit about that and then go into a quick practice, right?
Okay. This slide is really, it summarizes our conversation, so I'm going to skip it, but you do have it in a handout. And then this is just adapted from an article from the nursing. I actually, it was very technical, so I rewrote basically what they're saying, but go ahead and just, you have it as a handout, just go ahead and take a look at it in terms, and it also reinforces what people are talking about is what's the context, you know, for why we would be using a tool like MI. In terms of the open-ended question piece, we were going to do a demonstration, and based on our conversation, you know, we were going to try. We were all going to have the same scenario, which is a teenager, a young couple, whom just had a baby. They live on their own. And we wanted to engage them about taking care of the baby in terms of not putting the baby on his or her stomach, and how that conflicts with their grandmother's coaching of them to put the baby on their stomach. So that's very specific. And what kinds of open-ended questions to start the conversation might you offer? So there you have an ambivalence between a new way and an old way, and the new way suggests that infant mortality would be reduced, and the old way has infant mortality higher. So you're trying to talk to a young person who's in conflict with traditional way from learning from their grandmother's generation to doing this new way, and they're feeling mixed. They have mixed feelings about it. So take a moment, and you're doing an engagement. You're going to try to engage them around this change behavior. And so open-ended questions are not in fact, many of the questions on the chat box, to me, as you're processing the information, to me, many of those are open-ended. So open-ended questions are questions that are framed in a way that requires the person to respond in an open-ended way versus yes or no. However, developmentally, for the brain of a teenager, they may think yes or no, or they may give brief answers. It's either a right or a wrong, or this or that. And their brain may or may not be able to do abstract thinking. So when you're asking open-ended questions to a teenager, sometimes you have to do a follow-up open-ended question. So let's just do a quick role play. And the way we want you to practice it is we'll practice an open-ended, maybe two open-ended questions with each other. And then the person who's being the client would respond. I'm wondering, because of time, Tara, if at this point we could just go ahead and do the reflection part. So we're going to do open-ended and reflections together because of time. And I think people can do that. If they, we can coach them if needed. So let's just demonstrate that for the remainder. Do that practice for the remainder of our time today, and we're going to build on that. Some of you are going to be more advanced in that practice than others, and so let's not worry about whether you're doing it right or not, because in training you're here to just learn. You're not here to be perfect. So I just wanted to say that. that you're in training, and this is the place you want to make the mistakes. If you're feeling like you're making a mistake, go ahead and make it, because we are here to help and support your learning. This is not something that that you should worry about whether you're doing it right or wrong. It's just practice. Just like you're playing a musical instrument, you know, you're going to make mistakes, and you just learn by having the teacher or having someone more advanced help you through that. Okay, so Kara, are you okay with that?
Yeah, so I think are we gonna role play here? I would probably go ahead be better in terms of time to let people practice really quickly, and then we can come back and wrap up.
Okay.
And so I'm just putting in the chat box for everybody, just the quick scenario and instructions. So this is how it's gonna look, y'all. We're going to break out into rooms. There are 23 of us, and so there might be 2 to 3 people per room, but we're going to make sure that there is hopefully enough team members in each room. And so when you get into your rooms, you're going to have to unmute, potentially put on your camera or video, and then we're going to decide who's going to be the speaker and who's going to be the helper, and then who's going to be the client. And then so whoever our helper is, you're going to think of 2 to 3 open-ended questions, and then present those to the client in that conversation, and then practice some reflection. So in the chat box, I'll put it in so that you can see that. But there's like simple reflection, so using the same words and just very simply rephrasing. And then there's complex reflection, so paraphrasing or summarizing, a lot like Dr. Tomlin did when she was working with me as the helper. So be prepared in your groups to determine who is going to be the helper and who's going to be the client, and start thinking of some open-ended questions that you can use with relationship to a teenager who you're trying to teach her about safety. There is some dissonance between, the new ways of, back to sleep, etc., and kind of what she has been taught by her elders. Are there any questions? Is everybody comfortable with this? You can use the reactions to give a thumbs up. You can high five, however, but just really quickly to see if there are any questions. We're all on the same page. Great. Okay. So I'm going to put this into the chat box so that the instructions should carry over into your breakout rooms, but you will hopefully have one of us facilitators there with you to provide some guidance and answer any questions if needed, okay? Give me about 3 seconds to get everybody going. So I have Carla, me, Kathy, Dawn, and Laurel. And so one of us will be in those rooms, okay? Everybody good to go? Thumbs up. All right.
How much time?
We're gonna give it till, how about 10 minutes?
All right.
Perfect. So we'll be prepared to wrap up and come back by 9:45.
9:45, okay.
Yeah, and then give me just one moment because I am going to make sure we have enough people in these rooms. So. So, oh, Carla, where are you, Carla? I don't see. Sorry, I'm looking at this list. Okay, so we're going to try this as best we can to have somebody in every room. I think we have 6 people, so I might have to move folks a little bit, but we should be good. All right, here we go.
We ran out of time in our group to finish the second practice, but we were doing, I think, pretty good. So it's 9:47. Quick check-in. Was that practice helpful? Would you like to do more practice? Why don't we unmute you so you can talk, or go to the chat room? So give us some feedback about doing that practice, because we can do some more next week, and we'll build upon it. Yeah, practice is helpful. Great, thank you.
I like that. I like made Dawn do the interviewing part because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't have it in me right now.
Yeah.
But it made me like take a few steps back and go, how do I feel in the way that I'm like that I'm being talked to and how they're questioning me.
Right.
And we started like really kind of diving into that. We were just finishing like we actually did kind of one where I was like, oh, that don't feel good, and then Dawn switched it up, and then I'm like, wait, now I feel really good. And it's nice to kind of like have that other perspective, so I can be remembering what's the difference between, you know, supporting and motivational interviewing and then like just leading to an ultimate goal that you may think is the best in the situation, which is not really like, that goes back to like a fixing lens, and that didn't feel right either. And so it was really good and really helpful, Dawn. So thank you.
Okay, great. Well,
No,
so
I think
far,
it was it was an easy place to make mistakes, right? Because to be honest, I started down a road and I was just like, oh, this is a bad path, you know, like I could just tell I was it was not. And so I just stopped it in the middle, and I'm like, okay, I'm calling a lifeline. And Serene was really good about helping, and so we kind of talked it through, and then we went back into it. And I thought, oh, I'd much rather do that in a practice setting than with a real client. Or my daughter.
Yeah. Wonderful. Anybody else want to share? Most people are saying thank you for good practice, and practice is helpful.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just want to say I think practice definitely is helpful, and then just feedback. Tara gave me some good feedback on I was the helper in this case, and that's what I need, is just some good constructive critique along the way, which applying this to practice and just going through the motions again is going to be really beneficial going forward. So thanks.
We want to, I'm going to give Tara some control here in about a minute so she can organize us. But, and I do want to send a big heart appreciation to Tara and to Carla for working with me to make this more engaging today, but also to organize and to make it more relevant to you and where you are at locally, because that's very helpful. I also want to do a shout out to our elders, other elders. Susan, thank you for your comments, and others who have contributed to our knowledge, to increasing our knowledge. Laurel, thank you. What we're going to do next week is we're going to build on this practice session, and I can do a structured demonstration, and then we'll go into the practice breakout rooms again. We're going to build on the oars and move to the change talk aspect of it. And I have a thought in mind about doing that I'll share with Tara and Carla if you want to do some pre-planning on that. We may spend a significant amount of time in the breakout rooms to be able to get that practice in. So just be prepared to observe and to practice, and to also maybe be the client. And you can pick which role you feel most comfortable with. So there's no, if you're not ready to do the sharing practice, you can observe, which is also instructive as well. So I wanted to thank you for your time today and appreciation for your thoughts and your wisdom that you shared today. Tara, do you want to take it over?
You're on mute, Tara.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So we have a plan for next week. So we're going to continue practicing, and that's going to probably be the focus of that session. But going forward, so what happens now? We know that motivational interviewing is something we have to kind of do to feel confident in, and to hone those skills in terms of the work that we're doing with families. And so even though this 5-session series is going to wrap up next week as with the group, with our community of practice as a whole, we want to continue building these skills out through this action period of our community of practice. So what that means is, putting it into practice, going out into the home, trying some of these things out, and then coming back and processing how it went. And some things that you learned, some things that you want to try for next time. And so then that way, we're not just getting this training, but we're also putting it into the work that we're doing, and then getting some feedback so we can have that support. And we know that this is a lot of times what we're doing with our families, right? We're teaching them a new skill, and then they go practice it that week or a week or 2 weeks before we come back. And then when we come back during that next visit, we're checking in and we're providing some feedback and seeing what worked and what didn't, so that we can go back to the drawing table. So we're going to kind of use that for our own selves and our own learning with this new or updated skill for us, right? What that means is that Dr. Tomlin has been so gracious and so generous to offer, to meet with us in groups, small groups, to talk about how we're doing. And we're going to put that forward and see. And we can talk more about the logistics next week, but we wanted to kind of get an idea today of who might be interested, because then we can kind of gather in small groups of 5 or 6 people to check in and get some coaching from Dr. Tomlin, probably on a monthly basis, unless we feel like it. I think a monthly basis is what we had talked about. So raise a hand or in the chat, who all is interested in coming together in this small group monthly to continue talking about MI and accepting this coaching from Dr. Tomlin. So Amy is interested, Janelle, and this will help us kind of determine like the groups and stuff, so that we can talk about logistics next week.
And if you're ambivalent yet today, since ambivalence is the word of the day, just know that we'll be reaching out to your sites individually as well too, just to discuss this and what it might look like, because it isn't a one size fits all. We're really here to support you in a way that you feel that this will be most helpful for your community. So we'll be reaching out as part of our ongoing TA to our various sites, and just to see what your interest is and what your need is. So you don't have to commit today, and if you didn't raise your hand today, we'll still be having another chance to discuss this.
Yep, exactly. We sure will. Awesome. Okay, well then, let's see, what else we got on deck. So we wanted to talk about what's going to come up next week. We wanted to review, which we did today. Oh, I think that brings us, hey, we hit our list, our to-do list. High five.
Woo!
That's rare for me, okay? Half the time I get lost. So, okay, so Joe, you have to leave. No worries. Oh, he left already. Bye-bye, Joe. Okay, great. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Hopefully, I see Serena. Looks like she's in a medical room with her baby.
Oh,
all is well. And we'll gather next week for our 5th and final session as a larger group. And we'll talk more about what these small groups are going to look like, okay? So thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the week.
Miigwech, thank you.
Carla, do you want to hang out for just a second?
Sure.
And then Dr. Tomlin, if we want to kind of set a time to meet this next week or this week. And I don't know, Laurel, if you want to join us too, if you have time to stay on.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. See you next week.
Okay, so how do we feel like that went, Carla and Dr. Tomlin? What are your thoughts?
Oops. I guess I feel like we just had a really engaged group. I still have a struggle with, we had 2 people in my breakout room of 4 that did not have microphones. So I really want to be conscientiousness next week about sending out for people that aren't able to join Zoom. They either don't have the bandwidth, or if they don't have the technology with microphones and computer cameras. So let's make sure that we have an alternate way for them to join. Because I did send out a phone number that was listed on the invitation, but when I tried calling it, Susan wasn't able to join using that, and when I tried calling it, it didn't work either. So let's just, that would be my only. I thought the session went great, and I loved your information, Dr. Tomlin. But this is just a technical issue on our behalf about making sure that we send out a video link, whatever that is. If it's a if it's a phone number that works for Zoom, that we know for sure that people can join via phone. But that was the only barrier I had in my group. But the other 2 folks that were able to join were very engaged and really excited about it. And they were 2 people that I thought would be really reluctant to talk, but they were very talkative and very much shared.
Carla, can you share what happened when you called in? Like, what did it do?
It just didn't do anything. It just was dead air. And I'd hear a little beep, beep every once in a while, but it didn't take me anywhere. It didn't do anything. And I only tried once because, we were in the, in the meeting, so I didn't want to interrupt that. But it just was just a beep, beep, and then it would be dead air and it wouldn't do anything.
Did you go in by chance under your calendar invitation that was on your calendar and opens up your own unique Zoom invite?
Yep, I'm on there.
Okay, because that's.
And then it says dial by your location, and I didn't know which one to pick, so I picked Chicago just because that was the closest.
Yep.
And it just beeped. It didn't even ask for a meeting ID or anything. It just it beeped. It never really it joined, but it didn't prompt me to do anything else.
Huh.
I just want to preface that there has been a lot of technical glitches with Zoom this week because
school
millions of kids are getting on for school. They're using it, and so I know for like Monday it totally crashed. So nobody in the country could use Zoom on Monday morning.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so I know yesterday when I was facilitating another call or the supervisor webinar that I do monthly, I had a lot of troubles in the beginning too. So I hope that is not something that is the reason why, not that we can't figure it out. So next week before we start, maybe I'll just try to send out the phone number with the meeting ID, and they could try to hop on that point.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, because that was the only glitch. Otherwise, my goodness, people were very talkative, and so I'd love to hear your feedback, Dr. Tomlin.
I would agree with you, and I think I'm always processing as a trainer. It's like, it's the way to go, but I'm always thinking in between sessions and then during the session. And I'm wondering if what made the difference was that Tara who represents NU, Carla, had a more significant role in the engagement process, because they don't really know me, and they don't know who I am, and they don't know what I think. And I think having more people in the peer group as well as the lead group share and be a significant part of the training, I think made a huge difference. So I wish I had thought about that earlier. But this session makes up for what I was missing in the earlier meetings. But even with that, people were still getting something out of it. It just wasn't as rich, I think. And today's session was much richer because people were talking about themselves and what they think and how they feel. And they saw Tara being willing to take a risk with me. And that was huge, I think, because it's safe for them to take a risk with each other. So that I really appreciate that, the sharing of that.
Thank you. Yeah,
And Charlie was there cheering us on. I could see it.
you know, it's been challenging. Today he's in a mood because my mother-in-law, she had her hip replaced a couple weeks ago.
Oh my.
And so so her nurse and her physical therapist have been coming over almost every day, and so they're in and out, and so it doesn't affect us, like, you know, generally nobody can tell that they're here or anything like that. But my dog goes crazy, so I've been putting him in my bedroom, which he's used to. It's not forever, you know, he knows that's drill, but he's having a hard, like, that's why I kept turning back there barking, like nobody's here. He just wanted out, so he knows I'm up here talking. So he's just in a mood. He's driving me bananas, but that's okay.
He's fine. He's fine. He's just so cute. I didn't even notice him. I was just looking him at on the couch right now.
Well, I have a dog issue too, but he's fast asleep right next to me all through the whole class, which is unusual. So, you know, no worries. You know, I agree. I didn't notice it getting in the way at all.
Mm-mm.
Good. I was like, oh my gosh.
No, I purely just mentioned him because I just saw him laying there now and he was stretching.
He looks really comfy.
He does.
My cat is on the ottoman right next to me here too. Like both of them really have a hard time being more than 10 feet from me, generally all day long. Like they're with me. So but I think that this session went very well. I agree, Dr. Tomlin, that they are here with me, and I've been presenting and facilitating with this group for several months, including the initial training that we did. So I know, you know, kind of who our talkative folks are, and then who are not. And I also feel very comfortable just calling people out, you know, just saying, hey, let's hear from you.
Because they know you, right? You know, we've trained every one of these folks. They know us personally, every one of them. And, you know, you really said it, you hit the nail on the head last week, Dr. Tomlin. Like, this is a reluctant group. Plains Indians really need to have that level of trust before they'll open up. Boy, I just noticed that as a home visitor even. It honestly was easier as I got older. I've been doing this work since 1981. So as I got older, it was much easier because I'd often just play the elder card, right?
Yeah.
I'm an elder.
Yeah.
I'm above reproach. I'm an elder and I'm asking you to do something. I'm asking you to talk. I'm asking you to participate. I don't know. It worked very respectfully, of course. You try to model good elder behavior, but as an elder, they'd find it a little bit more difficult to be disrespectful to me, I guess, and unengaged.
One other thing I wanted to think about, Dr. Tomlin, and in preparing for next week is maybe we can come up with some scenarios, right, to share, and we could just have those available to people, because I know we do that a lot in our training for the model, the family home visiting model, and then that way people don't. It's a little bit less on, more focused on the skills and less on worrying about the scenario. So I can come up with that, and I wanted to see what. I think you said it, but I don't know if I remember exactly what skills we're going to cover. Let me see. So you said adding in the full ORS practice with change talk and processing of them both ones, right?
Yeah. And, you know, that's like people are saying, practice. We'll continue that on in the post-training group. You had, I think I counted 5 people volunteer just right off the top. And so that's a group right there, along with you and Carla and whoever else later. So if you can get a few more people, we'll just have 2 groups. We'll divide it into 2 to do the practice. One thing I'll throw out to you, but I'm not sure this group is ready for it, and it's a thing I do in training that is not scenario driven. But I do like to give people the option of a scenario. So one thing I do is I call it real play versus role play. So if a person wanted to personally experience MI practice through their own ambivalent struggle that is appropriate to share, that is something they're really going through, or maybe just recently went through, then they can be that person. They can be themselves, in other words. So they can do the real play, and it could be I am I'm struggling with following the CDC guidelines, or something that's personal to them, where they are expressing themselves and working through their ambivalent struggle while the person is practicing MI with them. People generally like that, but I don't know if that would be appropriate here because you are a work group to some extent. But generally, there will be somebody who will choose to do that, and then you don't really need a script as much, and then you can have some scenarios. So I don't know if you feel like people are ready for that, but that is actually more potent as a training tool than when you're on the receiving end than doing a scripted role play. So that's one thought. The other thought I had actually this morning as I was thinking about this, there is a scripted thing we can do as a practice that's called a Taste of MI, and it is scripted. And I'm going to send you the script. And there's this is what you would do, this is what you would not do, and this is what you would do scenario. So we may want to go ahead and demonstrate that. And it is concrete, and which is why I was offering it, is there's actually things you can do that you can actually, it's a structure you can actually take into a real session with somebody or visit with somebody that gives them that structure that would then allow them to practice in a more comfortable way. So I'm going to send you that structure, and then you can tell me, yeah, let's do it, let's not do it.
I think that's a great way to open next week, and kind of prep for how it's going to look. One thing I wonder is, so if you feel comfortable kind of adapting the script a little bit, so the situation is more around like a family home visit rather than ED, CD or whatnot.
Well, it's not. It's actually just a practice on MI. It doesn't have a focus.
Okay.
I'll send it to you so you can take a look.
Great. I think that's a great way to open up next week. And then to kind of lead into the practice, we can then provide some instructions for the practice. And then the real play versus role play. I have personally experienced this part of MI, and I really, really like it. I think it will be a great idea for the small group coaching sessions, rather than the larger group, just because then it's a little bit more intimate, a little bit more safe for somebody to
take that risk. That's helpful. Okay, so we don't need to introduce that next week. Okay.
Yeah, and then we have, so like you said, we have 5 people who expressed interest in doing the small group coaching, and I'll send an email out this week, just with probably like a, hey, let me know if you or anybody from your team wants to sign up for in-person coaching, or not in-person, sorry, small group coaching. And then we'll look at that next week. Is there, and then I think we'll probably have to determine the scheduling of the meetings based on how many people that we have. But I would like to leave next week with with a schedule. That way, I just feel that we're more likely to get everybody on the same page if we do it all together as a group and figure it out. So we might have to do some logistical stuff at the end next week.
Okay, well, go ahead and send me your time frame as you see it. I would say for the practice, at least 45 minutes. The group size was 4 in my group. When I say 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Was it 4 or 5? I wasn't counting myself, so it was 1, 2, 3. It was 3 people plus me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
So if we did a longer practice, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I think 45 minutes would be good. We only did one way today, so
yeah.
Hopefully we have, because it was really just 2 of us with the audio audio issues that people were having. Boy, 45 minutes with just me and one other person would have been grueling. I mean, she was really trying to be talkative, but she's not naturally a very talkative person. And thankfully I knew her really well, so we could kind of like, I could say, oh my gosh, this reminds me of that client that you saw out in Enemy Swim. Remember we talked about it, and you were talking about how you were helping her do some goal setting. How do you think this would fit into it? So we did have this rich discussion, but honestly, if I wouldn't have known her or had that background, it would have been crickets, because we had one person only joining on chat, the other person wasn't there, and then it was just Tara and I. So it would have been a challenge for 45 minutes if they aren't there. So that's my only concern, is if the breakout rooms contain people that's why I want to make sure that they can join via audio, that they have some way to join.
Yeah. And we can always move people around. So if you're in that room, Carla, and you guys go through one round and you're like, okay, well, we don't have any other way to do anything else, we can switch it around. I know there was one room without a facilitator, and it was Nidra and Janelle, and they're very good already. So I said, I'm going to let you guys do your thing, and then I'll step out. But that might be also an opportunity to bring in, Janelle said she's very comfortable.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And Joe's very comfortable. So we could also potentially ask them to, support facilitating in other rooms to add on to the 4 and then on 5 of us. So, all right. Well, I have to hop off, ladies, because I do too. All right. So thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just add my to
yes, please.
From my group? Please, they might need a little bit more coaching in what some of those pieces are. So for the scenarios, or what pieces for MI that are going to be practiced, maybe give some examples like wording that they can utilize, because that was my observation from my group. So that's all.
Great point. Thank you.
Thanks,
I've noticed the same thing, Laurel. Thanks. All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.